The moment my little grandson grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Grandpa, please don't sign that," every instinct inside me told me something was terribly wrong. My son stood across the table smiling as if everything had already gone according to plan. I slowly lowered the pen, pretending I needed another minute to read the papers. That simple decision saved everything I had spent my entire life building. Less than 10 minutes later, a lawyer walked through my front door carrying one document that turned every smile into complete silence. If you enjoy emotional family stories filled with unforgettable twists and meaningful life lessons, I'd truly appreciate you subscribing to Behind Dad. Before we continue, I'd also like to mention that the pictures shown throughout this video are creative visual dramatizations inspired by this story. They are not real photographs from my family's life. My name is James Carter. I'm 73 years old, and after my wife Margaret passed away, my family became the only reason I kept moving forward. The house we built together wasn't expensive, but every wall held a memory. Every morning I still made 2 cups of coffee before remembering I was the only one left to drink it. My son Daniel visited often with his wife and my grandson Ethan. I believed they came because they loved spending time with me. Looking back now, I realized they were watching something else entirely. For months, Daniel kept mentioning how difficult it must be for an older man to handle a large house alone. He offered to take care of everything if I simply trusted him. I always thanked him, but something about those conversations never felt right. Still, he was my son. I wanted to believe his intentions were good. A father doesn't easily imagine betrayal from the child he once carried on his shoulders. That Saturday afternoon, Daniel arrived carrying a neat stack of legal papers. He smiled and said they were simple estate documents that would make life easier for everyone. I picked up the pen without much thought. Then I felt a tiny hand touch my arm. Ethan leaned close enough that only I could hear him. His frightened voice barely rose above a whisper. "Grandpa, please don't sign that. Dad told Mom not to let you read every page." My heart started pounding. I quietly set the pen back on the table, looked into Daniel's eyes, and calmly said, "I think I'll wait." Just then, someone knocked firmly on the front door. I stood up and opened the front door. A well-dressed attorney introduced himself as Michael Harris. The moment Daniel saw him, the smile disappeared from his face. Michael politely asked if he had arrived before any documents were signed. I nodded and quietly stepped aside. Something told me this visit wasn't a coincidence. Daniel quickly tried to end the meeting, saying we were busy handling private family business, but Michael calmly replied, "Mr. Carter, what I'm carrying is directly related to your property. This cannot wait." My hands began to shake. I invited him inside while Daniel paced across the living room. Ethan quietly sat beside me, refusing to leave my side. I could see fear in his young eyes, and that frightened me even more than the legal papers on the table. Children rarely understand complicated legal matters, but they always recognize when something feels wrong. I gently squeezed his shoulder, silently thanking him for stopping me before it was too late. Michael opened his leather briefcase and carefully removed a sealed envelope, several certified property records, and a thick legal file. He explained that years earlier my late wife, Margaret, had returned to his office to update our estate plan. She told him she worried someone might someday pressure me into signing important papers after she was gone. At the time, I laughed when she mentioned it. I trusted my family completely. Now I realized she had seen a danger that I never wanted to believe could exist. Daniel interrupted, insisting the papers on my table were only routine estate forms that would simplify everything. Michael calmly asked if I had personally read every page before signing. I admitted I hadn't. He then compared Daniel's documents with the certified copies inside his file. Within seconds, he found several pages that would have transferred broad control over my home and financial decisions without clearly explaining the consequences. My stomach dropped. I looked at Daniel, hoping he would deny it, but he lowered his eyes without saying a word. The room fell completely silent. Even the sound of the clock on the wall suddenly seemed loud. Michael slowly reached into his briefcase one more time and removed another sealed envelope with Margaret's handwriting across the front. Looking directly at me, he said softly, "James, your wife instructed me to open this only if anyone ever asked you to sign papers without giving you the full truth." Emily, Daniel's wife, covered her mouth in shock, while Daniel's hands began trembling as I reached for the envelope. My fingers trembled as I held Margaret's sealed envelope. For a moment I couldn't bring myself to open it. Seeing her handwriting again made me feel as if she were standing beside me, quietly reminding me to stay calm. I looked at Daniel. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I remembered teaching him to ride a bicycle, cheering at his baseball games, and promising that no matter what happened, I would always be there for him. Now we sat in the same room, separated by something far more painful than distance. We were separated by broken trust. Michael gently encouraged me to read the letter. Margaret wrote that if I was holding those pages, it meant someone I loved had allowed fear or greed to become stronger than honesty. She explained that she had updated our estate plan with strict legal protections. No property, savings, or financial authority could ever be transferred unless I received independent legal advice from her attorney first. She wasn't trying to control our family. She simply wanted to protect me if I ever became vulnerable after losing her. As I finished reading, tears rolled down my face. Even after her passing, she was still watching over me. Daniel finally stood up with tears in his eyes. His voice cracked as he admitted the truth. His business had been drowning in debt for almost a year. Banks refused every loan application, and creditors were threatening legal action. Someone convinced him that if he gained control of my property, he could refinance it, save his company, and quietly return everything before I ever discovered what had happened. He kept telling himself he was helping the family, but deep inside he knew he was betraying the man who had sacrificed everything to raise him. Little Ethan suddenly reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing of our family standing together in front of my house. Across the top he had written, "Families don't take from each other." The room became completely silent. Daniel looked at his son's drawing, then covered his face with both hands. Michael slowly closed the legal file before reaching into his briefcase one last time. He removed a certified court document, placed it gently on the table, and quietly said, "James, after what has been admitted today, this order now decides what happens next." I unfolded the certified court document with trembling hands while everyone waited in complete silence. Michael quietly explained that because I had not signed Daniel's papers, every legal right to my home, savings, and estate remained exactly where Margaret had intended. The court order also confirmed that no one could ask me to transfer property or financial authority without independent legal advice. Margaret had prepared every safeguard years before she passed away. She wasn't trying to punish our family. She simply knew that grief could leave a person vulnerable. Reading those words made me realize she was still protecting me even after death. My eyes filled with tears because the woman I loved had once again saved my future. Daniel could no longer hold back. He fell into the chair and admitted everything. His company had failed under overwhelming debt, and collectors were demanding payment every week. Instead of asking me for help, he convinced himself that taking control of my assets was the only way to save his family. He truly believed he could fix everything before I ever found out. Looking at him, I didn't see an evil man. I saw a frightened son who had allowed fear to replace honesty. That truth hurt more than any financial loss ever could. Then Ethan quietly walked over, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "Grandpa, I didn't want anyone to hurt you." Those simple words broke whatever strength I had left. Michael calmly confirmed that the questionable documents would never have legal effect. He collected every unsigned page, sealed them as evidence, and advised Daniel to resolve his financial problems through lawful means instead of deception. Daniel apologized without making excuses. He admitted he had betrayed my trust, not because he stopped loving me, but because he stopped believing the truth could solve his problems. Trust would not return overnight, but his confession was the first honest step toward rebuilding our family. That evening, I placed Margaret's letter beside her framed photograph in the living room. I looked around the home we had built together and quietly thanked her for loving me enough to prepare for a day she prayed would never come. Justice had protected my home, but my grandson's courage had protected my heart. If this story touched you, please leave a comment because your words may encourage another family to choose honesty before one bad decision changes everything. Share this story with someone who believes parents and grandparents deserve love, respect, and gratitude while they are still here. Thank you for spending this time with me on Behind Dad. Remember, the strongest inheritance you can leave your family is not a house or money. It is truth, integrity, and the courage to do what is right when nobody is watching.